Around the world, there are legends so terrifying and so persistent that they've become a part of local history. These are stories passed down for generations, whispered in hushed tones, and sometimes backed by eyewitness accounts that are hard to shake. They aren't just spooky tales. They're stories that have haunted communities for centuries and make you wonder if some things are very, very real. From the headless ghost of a saint who won't let a little thing like decapitation stop his sermon, to a phantom ship doomed to sail the seas forever, we're about to explore some of the world's most terrifying legends. These are the stories that blur the line between folklore and fact, suggesting the truth might be way scarier than anything we could make up. So, lock your doors, maybe turn down the lights, and get ready as we journey into the most spine-chilling ghost stories from around the world.
Section 1. The Weeping Woman of Latin America, La Llorona.
First, we head to the rivers and moonlit back roads of Latin America. For centuries, people here have heard the terrifying wail of a heartbroken spirit, and they know it's a sinister omen. She's known as La Llorona, the Weeping Woman, and her legend is one of the most famous and feared in the Americas.
The story has countless variations, but the core of it is always the same, and it's always chilling. La Llorona was a living woman named Maria, born in a poor village, but blessed with incredible beauty. A wealthy nobleman saw her, became completely captivated, and they married against his family's wishes and had 2 sons. For a while, it seemed like a fairy tale. But eventually, the nobleman grew distant. He was embarrassed by his peasant wife and left her for a woman of his own class. Devastated and consumed by a blinding rage, Maria took her 2 sons to the river, and in a fit of madness, she drowned them. The second the water went quiet, the horror of what she'd done hit her. She drowned herself in that same river, but her spirit found no peace. When she tried to enter the afterlife, she was stopped and asked a single question that would become her eternal curse. Where are your children?
Now her spirit is trapped between worlds. She's forced to wander the waterways forever, a ghostly figure in a white gown, her face sometimes described as terrifyingly blank, or even twisted into the shape of a horse's head. She is eternally searching for the children she murdered, and her mournful cry, "Ay, mis hijos! Oh, my children!" strikes absolute terror into anyone who hears it.
This is more than just a sad story. It's a warning. They say that if you hear her cries, you've been marked for misfortune or even death. It's said she snatches children who wander off in the dark, mistaking them for her own before dragging them to a watery grave. For generations, parents have used this story to keep their kids from staying out too late. But for many who live by the water, the sound of a woman weeping in the night is a very real and very present danger.
Section 2. The Phantom Ship of the High Seas, the Flying Dutchman. From the haunted rivers of the Americas, we're heading out onto the vast, unforgiving open ocean. Sailors have always told stories of ghost ships and spectral crews, but none is more infamous than the Flying Dutchman. Seeing this ghostly ship on the horizon is basically a death sentence, a sign that your own vessel is about to end up at the bottom of the sea. The legend seems to have started back in the 17th century during the golden age of the Dutch East India Company. It's the story of a captain, usually called Hendrik van der Decken, at the helm of a massive ship. In 1641, he was trying to round the Cape of Good Hope off the coast of Africa, a notoriously dangerous stretch of water, when a ferocious storm blew in. His crew, terrified, begged him to turn back, but van der Decken was a proud, stubborn man. He swore a blasphemous oath, declaring that he would round the Cape even if he had to sail until Judgment Day. Well, his defiance sealed his fate. The ship and everyone on it were lost to the storm, but his curse held true. Captain van der Decken and his ghostly crew are now doomed to sail the seas for all eternity, never able to make port. And this isn't just some old sailor's yarn. People have been logging sightings of the Flying Dutchman for centuries. One of the most famous accounts came from Prince George of Wales, the future King George V of England. In July 1881, while he was on a naval voyage near Australia, he and 12 other crewmen saw a phantom ship glowing with a strange red light as it crossed their bow. The very next day, the sailor who first spotted it fell from a mast to his death. Sightings have been reported even into the 20th century. During World War II, Admiral Karl Dönitz of the German Navy supposedly logged sightings from his U-boat cruise east of the Suez Canal. Even people on the shores of Cape Town have claimed to see a full-sailed ship appear in a storm, only to vanish moments later. Sure, scientists might say these are just a fata morgana, a complex optical illusion. But for the sailors who have seen the phantom glow of the Dutchman on a stormy sea, no scientific explanation can erase the chilling feeling that they've just looked a centuries-old curse right in the face. Section 3. The Headless Preacher of Paris, Saint-Denis. Our next story takes us from the cursed oceans to the ancient streets of Paris, France, and it's a legend so bizarre that it's literally carved into the stone of the Notre Dame Cathedral. This is the story of Saint Denis, the city's first bishop, a man whose faith was so strong that not even getting his head chopped off could shut him up. The story starts back in the 3rd century when Paris was a Roman city called Lutetia. Denis was a missionary sent to convert the locals to Christianity, and he was very good at his job. A little too good, actually. The local pagan priests got angry and had him and 2 of his friends arrested. After being imprisoned and tortured in some truly horrific ways, Denis still refused to renounce his faith. So the governor ordered his execution. He was taken to the highest hill in the city, a place we now call Montmartre, the mountain of the martyr, and he was beheaded. This is where the story gets really weird. According to the legend, the moment the axe fell, Denis' body stood up. It calmly walked over, picked up its own severed head, and, holding the head in its arms, just started walking. For nearly 4 miles, the headless bishop walked north, preaching a sermon on repentance from his own disembodied head the entire time. He finally collapsed at the exact spot where he wanted to be buried. That site is now the city of Saint-Denis, home to the magnificent Basilica of Saint-Denis. This unbelievable act made Saint Denis one of the most revered martyrs in history and the patron saint of France. If you visit Paris today, you'll see him everywhere. On the front of Notre Dame, there's a statue of him holding his own head. Paintings and sculptures all over the city show the same unforgettable image. The story might be ancient, but the picture of a man refusing to be silenced by death, carrying his own head while delivering one last defiant sermon, is still one of the most powerful and unsettling ghost stories in the world. Section 4. The Tragic Love of Maenak, Thailand.
Love and loss are at the heart of so many ghost stories, but few are as tragic and terrifying as the tale of Maenak, Thailand's most famous ghost. Her story, which many believe is based on real events from the 19th century, is about a love so powerful it literally defied death, with absolutely horrific results.
Maenak was a beautiful young woman, deeply in love with her husband, Mak. They lived a quiet life in a house near the Phra Kanong Canal in what's now Bangkok. Their happiness was cut short when Mak was drafted into the army and sent to war, leaving his pregnant wife behind. While he was gone, tragedy struck. Nak died in childbirth, along with her baby. Mak eventually returned home from the war, completely unaware of what had happened. To his relief and joy, he found his loving wife and their new child waiting for him. He settled right back into his old life, having no idea he was living with ghosts. The villagers all knew the truth and tried to warn him, but Mak was so in love, he just thought they were being cruel. Anyone who tried too hard to convince him met a nasty end, as Nak's spirit, furious at their meddling, began to terrorize the community. Mak finally learned the horrifying truth in a simple, everyday moment. One afternoon, Nak was preparing food and dropped a lime off the porch of their stilt house. Without a second thought, she stretched her ghostly arm to an impossible length to pick it up from the ground below. Mak saw it, and in that instant, he realized his wife and child were not of this world. Terrified, he fled to a nearby temple, knowing it was a holy place that spirits can't enter. Heartbroken and furious that Mak had abandoned her, Maenak unleashed her full, vengeful power on the village. Her reign of terror continued until a powerful monk finally managed to subdue her spirit. In one version of the story, he trapped her soul in a jar and threw it into the canal. In the more popular version, a famous monk named Somdet To reasoned with her, promising that she and Mak would be reunited in a future life. He then took a piece of her forehead bone and wore it in his waistband as a protective amulet. To this day, there is a shrine to Maenak in Bangkok where people still leave offerings, praying for a safe childbirth or hoping to keep their loved ones from being drafted. Section 5. The Haunted Sanatorium of Waverly Hills, United States.
Some places just feel heavy. They're so saturated with suffering that the pain seems to have soaked right into the walls, leaving behind an energy that can never be washed away. Waverly Hills Sanatorium in Louisville, Kentucky is one of those places. It was once a cutting-edge hospital for tuberculosis patients, but today it's known as one of the most haunted places on Earth. Opened in 1910, Waverly Hills was built to fight the White Plague, a massive tuberculosis outbreak in the early 20th century. This was a place of last resort, and for thousands of patients, it was the last place they would ever see. The exact number of deaths is unknown, but the most common estimates are in the thousands. So many people died that a 500-foot tunnel, originally built to bring supplies up the hill, was repurposed to secretly transport the bodies of the dead down the hill, out of sight of the living patients. It became known as the body chute.
It wasn't just the disease that caused suffering. The treatments themselves were often experimental and brutal. Patients had their ribs and lungs removed in painful surgeries and were forced to undergo fresh air treatments, which meant being left outside on porches day and night, even in the freezing cold of winter. The overwhelming sense of despair that filled this place is believed to be the source of the intense paranormal activity people report today.
The building was shut down in 1961, but the spirits of those who died there seem to have stayed behind. Visitors and paranormal investigators report seeing shadowy figures darting down the long, dark hallways and hearing disembodied voices and screams coming from empty rooms. The fifth floor, which housed mentally ill patients, is one of the most active areas and was supposedly the site of at least 2 nurses' suicides. Room 502 is particularly infamous. In 1928, a head nurse was supposedly found dead there, having taken her own life. Another nurse is said to have fallen or jumped from that same room's window in 1932.
But maybe the most terrifying thing people report seeing at Waverly is something they call the creeper. It's a large, dark shadow that has been seen crawling on the walls and ceilings, a sight that unnerves even the most seasoned investigators. There are also stories of friendlier spirits, like a little boy named Timmy who likes to roll a ball back and forth with visitors. Waverly Hills Sanatorium now stands as a decaying monument to a tragic chapter in medical history, its empty halls still echoing with the pain of thousands of souls who seem unable or unwilling to leave. These are just a handful of the legends that haunt our world. Every culture, every town has its own stories that are only told in the dark. Do you have a local ghost story that gives you the creeps? A legend that people in your town swear is true? Tell us about it in the comments below. We'd love to hear the stories that haunt your corner of the globe. And if you enjoyed this trip into the paranormal, be sure to hit that like button and subscribe for more explorations into the world's greatest mysteries. From a weeping mother in Latin America to a cursed captain on the high seas, these stories do more than just scare us. They tap into our deepest fears, the fear of death, of losing the ones we love, and of the vast, unknown darkness that lies just beyond what we can see. They reflect our histories and our anxieties, passed down through generations as warnings, entertainment, and as a way to try and make sense of things we can't explain. So, are they just products of our imagination, or optical illusions, or are they something more? Whatever the answer, these legends prove that some stories are much more than fiction, and they leave us with one final unsettling thought. We might not be as alone in this world